Are you ready for the next hit from the people who brought you eFootball? Because if you are, well, it actually turns out that the Silent Hill franchise is back. It's back in a rather extravagant fashion with a whole bunch of things, being put out there. And, it's been 11 years without any kind of game because they've obviously ensured that PT is completely erased from their own memory. And it's also a bit weird because Konami, they got out of games. We all sort of clowned on them for being very much into the pachinko partner machines. But they were out of games. And they started to come back into games in pretty rough fashion with eFootball. And also a bit of a new plan to essentially not develop things in-house as much because that basically completely went to shit. They're now a lot more open to outsourcing the development of these games. Some people would say, great, to studios with genre experience and all of that. And that's where things get a bit interesting with Silent Hill, which is back.
They've decided to go, hey, what's the most recent big psychological horror game that kind of did waves, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively? The Medium, Bloober Team. Let's have them remake Silent Hill 2. And to that, there has been a resounding, oh shit, oh no, this might not end very well, and we will get into that. But surprisingly, Konami have actually got really, 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 absolute moonshot out there, incredible news as well. So it's not all doom and gloom here, but Silent Hill F has been written by one of the most interesting and not quite prolific, but one of the most interesting Japanese writers in the horror genre that there's literally ever been. And that's very good news.
It's interesting with Bloober Team, knowing their weaknesses. I suppose the question will be, are they good at adaptation? Right? Because a lot of people would say, you take a Zack Snyder, and sometimes it's that's a cool shot, but do you know what you're implying with that shot? Does this actually make sense for the whole movie? But with Snyder, you find when he's doing a direct adaptation, which his first two movies that were more well received were, then, it's actually fine. The weaknesses are not in the show as much. But then something like Sucker Punch happens. It's no longer an adaptation. And now it is some of your strengths, but also all of your weaknesses. So I suppose with Bloober Team, the hope would be that their strengths in actually making the game shine, but maybe their thematic weaknesses not so much because it's an adapted work. Now, as for what was announced, we of course have got another video game movie.
Fantastic. I love those.
Love a good video game movie. Yes, it's called Return to Silent Hill, and it is by the guy who directed the 2006 Silent Hill, which in good old fashion of the sort of Resident Evil, your man Anderson style of movie, has a pretty bad critical rating and, a not great audience score, but certainly a little bit better. So who knows? Let's hope it's a bit more successful than the recent Resident Evil projects, like that absolute travesty of a Netflix show. So there's that. All right, then. Silent Hill Ascension. It's the most esoteric of them. It is a pretty different kind of Silent Hill experience, and it's being developed by everyone's favorite villain, Bad Robot Productions. Let's see if they will destroy another thing that I like. That, of course, is J.J. Abrams' production company. I always love it when J.J.'s name crops up, be it in, say, destroying Star Trek, that thing I like, or personally championing the two, literally who don't have a credit, not that experienced showrunners of Rings of Power. Cheers, J.J. Love what you and your gang do. Also, Behavior Interactive, who did Dead by Daylight. Genvid Technologies, who make massively interactive live game events. And D2J Entertainment, who, of course, we've heard before with them actually having those Disco Elysium rights. But, of course, they are the production company who did the Sonic movie.
Yeah,
so that's quite a bunch.
Yeah, it's a lot of people, and it's a quite mixed bag, but at least it's something kind of interesting. You could be Konami and go, remake Silent Hill 2, that's it. But instead, they seem to actually put a little bit of effort in going, hey, here's some projects that we thought someone mentioned that might be a good idea. We're like, you know what? Pachinko's not going to work because the legislation's cracking down on that. So we better get back into games in a big way. Very quick. Okay, sweet.
Yeah, I suppose if they can treat themselves as an IP holding company that is good at selecting development partners, that's probably going to be a lot closer to their strengths than doing this sort of thing in-house.
Yep, and that's some of the best cases of Riot doing that with Riot Forge.
Yeah.
That kind of, hey, what if other people make our games with our IP? kind of works. And it actually literally does.
Yeah, and I think Silent Hill Townfall is another pretty good example of that, where that is a co-publishing partnership between them and Annapurna Interactive, who, they are, I mean, indie's not exactly the word. They're that kind of like, almost double A indie or whatever, but they're the more kind of like sort of artsy focused games, or at least that's how they try to position themselves. Their most recent big hit, of course, was Stray. Right, so Annapurna, lots of people know about them. It's being done by No Code Studios, who made Observation and Stories Untold, both of which are pretty damn strong, generally recommended. So again, kind of seeing Konami reach out to people who perhaps do actually have the skills.
Yeah, so it may not be, of those three projects, they may not be the best ever, but if you like Silent Hill as an IP, you're at least going to eat something. It may not be very tasty, but it'll be something.
Yeah, we then got Silent Hill F.
Which is the really exciting one, honestly.
Yeah, so this is a story set in 1960s Japan, a beautiful yet horrifying world, which, to be honest with you, I kind of love that.
Yeah.
Like, immediately that just seems like a setting I've not had much of in games, so I'm pretty much down for that.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting when it's written by Ryukishi 07, who's known for Higurashi, for Umineko. Absolutely some of the people clown on the art because he did it himself. And he's not a very good artist, that's for sure. But they are some of the absolutely most beloved visual novels there are. The psychological horror experience of them is incredible. But one of the reasons that people are super excited, and it's quite in contrast to Bloober Team, is that Silent Hill is a thing where obviously it's very personal psychological horror, dealing with the likes of trauma and guilt and all those, like the emotional elements of horror, as opposed to just, oh, here's a scary thing. And that's where Ryukishi's, like, his life, he spent a lot of time as a social worker. So that's someone who's going to very much know people who have seen trauma, seen all sorts of stuff, and how to actually empathize with them and engage with them as humans. And that's where, like, a lot of the core of Higurashi and Umineko come from. It's, here's family trauma, here's small town trauma. He knows that super well and personally, but not just from the, I've experienced it, from the, I have, like, helped people with these problems. I have literally watched it happen from an empathetic perspective, but not necessarily a personal one, which means you go to 1960s Japan, you go to post-war Japan, where they have all of these drastic culture changes. They have all these tremendous problems stemming from the war, of course, but then all of, like, the cultural ideas of Japan suddenly becoming less Japanese with all of the American influence that quickly took over them as their, like, economy started to boom and stuff like that. And you've got this absolutely just perfect kind of mixing pot of, this could be a really, really, really good game, except for one small problem.
Oh no.
Which is, it's being developed by Neobards Entertainment, who are the lead developers of Resident Evil Reverse, which, that's not out. It's out this week, I believe. So people don't really know how good or bad it is, but it's a Resident Evil multiplayer online shooter.
Oh.
And you're like, why are these people making a Silent Hill game? What are you doing? So hopefully the development works and whatever Ryukishi writes can actually be, actually brought out. And also Higurashi and Umineko are on sale on Steam, or at least they were earlier this week, because someone there was very smart and knew what to do with that announcement. So that's the one part that's really actually exciting. Like, genuinely new, genuinely exciting. It's a thing that's not been done before. But then obviously you're Konami, you're cashing in on an IP. You have to go back to the nostalgia. You have to just do the AAA remake.
Yeah, and ideally we just want to pull a Capcom.
Yep, absolutely.
Like, straight up, this is it's very literal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? That's because just after this, Resident Evil had the showcase, and they were like, "Hey, here's Resident Evil 4 remake," and I was like, "Oh my god, this remake looks amazing. You're remaking what some people think is one of the best games of all time, and the remake looks, outside of a thing about a dog, everything looks really faithful and really, like, intelligently remade. It's got all the same exciting parts. It's got, character designs are updated that mostly look better. I think people are mixed on Ada, but like, man, Capcom are doing everything right, and they've done it right enough, especially in the horror genre. And honestly, I think, someone at Konami should send Capcom a thank you letter, because Capcom basically just put horror games on their back with Resident Evil, said, right, here's RE7, here's RE2, both types of games. You've got the first person really scary one, you've got the action kind of oriented one. There you go, we've just saved horror. And now Konami can kind of go, people want Silent Hill now, really? Okay, let's make it. And so they are.
Yeah. So the blueprint was established. Now it is being fulfilled. However, it is by Bloober Team. That kind of brings us back to what we were talking about a bit earlier. I think like Bloober Team, they can undoubtedly pull off gameplay and visuals.
For sure, yeah.
Which, to be honest, is really all they're going to need to do for this.
Theoretically.
Yes, theoretically. They're also bringing back some franchise champs as well for art and their composer, made on UE5 for PS5 and PC. So basically, there you go. They say one of their primary goals is to preserve the atmosphere that made the original so loved, which is a good thing and may be speaking to something. So Silent Hill. From the time that I remember playing, it was a demo disc, I think, from like PC Gamer. Or no, what was it, PlayStation Magazine? Maybe it was that.
Yeah, it would have been that.
Yeah. Fog. Even I remember playing games like Lego Island 2. Boy, howdy, that had fog. World of Warcraft Classic, that had fog. Turns out fog does make the world feel both smaller and larger. You can see less, which means that potentially there's more out there that you don't know about, which in a game like World of Warcraft means you can feel lost in a humongous vast forest, and in a game like Silent Hill means everything is terrifying. So there were some enhanced editions which basically stripped out fog. This was a tremendous not improvement. So some people are basically reading into that as saying, we're going to remake it and we're going to keep the fog. Which is good. Also, third-person over-the-shoulder perspective rather than the fixed camera angles and tank controls, which means they're going to be rebuilding the combat system and a few of the set pieces. Just talking about basically, hey, a lot of new technology. So with that new technology, this is how we think it would be done in this time. And again, obviously, we think about things like Resident Evil 2 Remake. So, basically all makes sense. There's no firm release dates or anything like that, but what there definitely is plenty of merch. As an example, do you want a coin bank dog statue thing? You can get that.
Yeah, the little reference to one of the... I don't know if it's technically a joke ending or supposed to be a really weird psychologically horror ending, but obviously the whole point is the dog was controlling everything in one of the Silent Hill 2 endings. So they're very, very aware of how do we get the kind of cute and the kind of tongue-in-cheek merch instead of like the super horror-y merch. And that seems to be obviously Konami just going, hello, please, this is our franchise, we need money fast, buy our things, you like our franchise, please buy, thank you very much. But it does come with a little bit of a weird downside, which is, if you notice, the skate deck there is called Red Pyramid Thing. No one at any time in history has ever called that Red Pyramid Thing. That's Pyramid Head. But apparently now they're like, no, this is officially called Red Pyramid Thing.
There you go.
And people are going, what do you mean? That's not it. Which obviously that doesn't mean anything, but it does have a lot of people sitting going, wait, what? Why should you just call it what everyone calls it? Konami, you're fucking weirdos.
And that kind of does lead on to the other thing, which is the reaction to all of this, because there's not really universal excitement. I think there's a lot of things there where there's basically just loads of baggage, right? Loads of caveats. I mean, if we think about, say, the film side.
Who gives a shit?
Who cares? I don't give a shit. I don't think Silent Hill people are really going to give a shit.
No. That's one of those things you'd imagine someone in a boardroom thought it was a cool idea because they went, you can make a movie of our game? Go for it.
Well, it's like, it is a cool idea.
Yeah, exactly. That is a cool idea. But for people who are like, can we have Silent Hill games, please? And they go, here, you have a Silent Hill movie. People are like, that's not what we asked for.
Well, and they also are getting Silent Hill games. I think with the movie, it's just probably going to be a bit shit. I know that's being a bit preemptively sort of doomer about it, but look, there is an established track record here.
Yeah, I would argue that's not being doomer. That's having pattern recognition of some sort.
Yes. So, there's that. As for Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill F, right, like being more traditional games that are like being outsourced, there's good and there's bad there. And when we get to Bloober Team, we we can't have that thing where sometimes people are not exactly sure what the thing they're making is saying, which is always funny when it happens. So we've got, can we really say there's a new Silent Hill game written by someone that used to work as a social worker and understands the care needed to treat the difficulties humans face? But also, there's a remake being done by the team that says you should shoot abuse victims. Now, this is the sort of thing where, hey, it's Twitter, and this is what we call a tweet that will do very well on twitter.com. So, look, obviously, a little bit of thematic oddness in the past with Bloober Team. Ultimately, I would assume that this would play to their strengths in how they are not doing their own narrative.
You would hope so, and there's a little reason why we should be happy enough there, but it is like, okay, well, if Konami are just going, hey, make a Silent Hill 2, and people go, sure, whatever, then people are just worried about that creative kind of freedom element of how much creative freedom do they have? Will they use that correctly? Do they actually understand psychological horror, or do they have no idea what they're doing? And that's the thing, if people literally don't know. And obviously people are now, and to an extent, rightly so, trained to fear the worst a lot of the time. That's just honestly how it kind of goes. Like, especially when it's something you can clown on so hard, especially in a world that's like very much, we're now taking a, like, kind of globally, societally, we're taking much of a turn towards mental health and considering it a lot more heavily and thinking deeply about these things instead of just kind of going, fucking, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We're not really that society anymore quite as much. So now people are going, well, people are thinking of that more. And that just means anything that falls outside of that is going to be more, I guess, aggressively attacked for not falling into that category, which is very much true of Bloober Team's medium. And it's like, we have an abridged version of what the medium's kind of, what you could read the message as, but we're not even sure we should read it because the video might get demonetized. It's dire. And obviously you're allowed to do whatever you want in video games. You're allowed to have a dark message or a murky message or an unhappy one. But the point was that it's very emotionally unsatisfying to players and quite emotionally unintelligent as far as players read into it. And just go, well, that was not good. It's not because you might be able to say it as like, maybe there's some people going moral grandstanding, but your video game should have a message that's like uplifting and positive at the end. More people are just kind of going, that was really untactful. Which is obviously, that's where you've got the opposition in the forms of Silent Hill F, where it's like, here's Ryukishi who's like, hey, an author's note in Higurashi, one of his novels, is like, please reach out to a mental health hotline if you're struggling. You're like, Higurashi was, early 2000s, I think? It was like one of the first major ones in the trend of kinetic novels, which is a visual novel that actually had a load of timed sound and animation to kind of prop them up a little bit, and that was very late 90s, early 2000s. But I was like, yeah, stellar stuff. And then there's the dialogue I think this is more talking about like the kind of how good the writing actually is, where you've got really terrible dialogue such as, and let me also say this, you are incompetent in red, cackle, 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 hee 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 hee. You're like, yeah, it's great, incredible horror game, but that's your dialogue.
Perfection. Yep. So that'll be fun. As for the Bloober Team stuff, then, I feel like we've mostly got into it. Some things that are fun. Look, it's Limmy. He's in the game. Very good. I'm sure that'll make it better. Then even the quote of like how they say they're going to make it basically how the original team like would have wanted to make it had they had the technology in 2001. And that is a funny little thing because in a way I can see people thinking that's just like sheer hubris and that kind of thing. On the other side though, I can also very obviously see that actually making sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that statement can go, right? That statement can go, hey, we know that they couldn't do what they wanted to do. We'll step up to that plate. And then there's also, they didn't want fog in their game, so we'll make sure it's very crispy clean. Obviously, that they kind of alluded towards the opposite of that. But this idea of, you're still a different team, so you have to be very careful. And that's the thing where you have to be like, it is that line between hubris and attention to detail, where they say, we're going to make it so this is how Team Silent would have made their game. And there's kind of a version of that where you say, we are paying the utmost respect to the original vision of Silent Hill 2. We have contacted some members of Team Silent who are, still available to contact, and we're getting their advice and trying to piece together things we'd like to they would have liked to do at the time, and we're going to try to capitalize on that, as well as bring a little bit of our own specialty from how our technological excellence in the medium. We want to see if we can bring some of that unique gameplay to the psychological horror Sentinel. That's a lot more wordy, but I think people would read that and go, oh, okay, we actually understand what you mean. But the problem is how Team Silent would decide the game. You can read that whatever way you want, and with Bloober Team not having the best rep, people read it in, naturally so, in the bad way, in the don't touch their beautiful work, you bastards kind of way. That's just how it works. Like,
is how people who are going to get heard will generally talk.
Yep.
And that means that the tone of the conversation is set. Mm-hmm. Even though we don't exactly have super solid foundation, but there is a little bit when we get into the medium and stuff. There's also a little bit of a relitigated drama with the original translator of the game, claiming he's never been fairly compensated or credited for stuff, and that's for the choice of developer. Well, okay, so the medium does sort of pay homage to Silent Hill, parallel worlds, the survival horror elements, and the mental health focus. There's also a bit of a suspicion that perhaps teams were essentially auditioning to get this gig, much in the same way that there are elements of Hitman 3 that make sense when you understand that IO were actually potentially working on a James Bond game. Now, to give like an abridged description here, which, in fairness, in some ways is not going to be the most charitable way to talk about it, but basically...
Actually, I will say this is literally from someone who's kind of making a point about how bad it is.
Yeah.
So it's very much a very loaded description this is how people will hear this description and go, oh, that's why it's bad. There are more charitable ways to read this or to understand the game, but this is the way people are actually hearing about it.
This is the meme that's caught on.
This is the meme version, yeah.
Yeah, this is the version of the story that has spread the most. So therefore, it's the one that will set the tone of the conversation. Medium is a game that asks the player to understand that a child, is that way because his stepfather abused him and his mum ratted out his people who the SS didn't like, girlfriend, to the SS, to his own, stepfather, and your sister is too damaged by this and she should die, or the player should shoot themselves. So basically the point is that it's trying to detail a cycle of trauma and abuse, but ultimately it kind of like moves in that cynical, maybe more dark direction. You could maybe say, oh, damaged goods, may as well take them out the back. Problem. There we go. How do we end the cycle? Just kill everyone.
Yes.
A little bit like that, I suppose. So that's like the version that's went on. Obviously, a game is allowed to do something unpleasant. That's totally cool.
Of course, that's what games are for. Like,
yeah. Like, if you do the most fucked up shit, it might be 8 out of 10 chance it'll be total bollocks and not be good. But there's always that 2 out of 10 chance it'll be like, I don't know, one of those weird Jay Bauman pervert movies that people like.
Yeah, because I would never stand on the side that goes, Manhunt was a bit too violent. Maybe video games shouldn't be allowed to be that way. I'd never be that way. But it's that kind of thing. Well, video games should be good, basically. They could be terrible to experience, but a good experience if you follow, in the same way that, people are like, oh, those video nasties. And it's like, yeah, but some people really like what I would consider like gratuitous gore, gratuitous themes. It's like, yeah, sure, you don't have to make a moral statement, but if you want to be respected as a game, you have to actually, I guess, not treat your things with respect, but do them well at least.
Yeah, and to go through Bloober's track record, right? So, Layers of Fear, 74, which is, all right. Now, some people, people laugh at IGN for very high reviews. They are 5.8 out of 10. Why was it not a 0.7 or a 0.9? I suppose we'll never know. Who knows how numbers work? But yeah, Layers of Fear 2, 70 per Open Critic. The medium, 75. So I think the point there is they actually, visually, that sort of side, they can do pretty well. It's just they have other weaknesses. You would very much hope that this is a situation where their strengths are being played to while their weaknesses are being diminished or mitigated, because they are essentially working to a very strong template.
Yep. And that seems to be the case because they are working with the original artist, Masaru Ito. They are working with the composer, Akira Yamaoka. And of course, as Imran Khan says, the people he's talked to about the game or close to the project says that Konami have had a really short leash with them, which is exactly what you would expect.
Yes.
Well, sorry, that's not what I would have expected, but it's what you would hope from Konami to go, listen, this is one of the last properties we can actually make video games in that have been fucking clowned on because we've got Castlevania, but we can't do a Metal Gear Solid because people will kill us and Metal Gear Survive is garbage. So do not, under any circumstances, Bloober, fuck this up. Thank you.
But if you are going to have tight-leashed corporate overlords who, I mean, how many times have you heard of, say, studio interference?
Yeah.
Publisher interference. Very much. Could cut both ways. Konami could really know what they want, hold them to that, sort of say, hey, that's a bit whack, we don't want that, and we could get a great experience, or they could just interfere and it could be a big old disaster.
Yeah,
obviously, hopefully it does work out.
Yeah, that's a fun thing, right? You've got like, okay, well, because usually in games we have this almost like dichotomy. It's like, okay, who's good? Dev's good. Who's bad? Publisher bad. In this case, people are kind of going, who's the good guy here? Because fuck Konami, like just all the way. But also, we can't really root for Bloober too much based on what we've kind of talked about today. Who's the good guy?
Honestly,
Are we just hoping the spirit of Silent Hill somehow sticks through all of it?
I don't really like the vengeful, the really vengeful, dripping with venom take that Twitter likes to have with, teams that have maybe made an honest mistake or something like that. I know that obviously with the medium that is going to be touchy territory.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose with the location of that team and all of the horrors that country also experienced in that conflict, you could perhaps be a bit charitable that they tried to do something there, it didn't work out. I don't know. I guess I am a bit of a sucker for a second chance, and ultimately, if people
should we all like?
Yeah, if people mess up, right? If they take that criticism about the medium story to heart, then then they improve. That's obviously something that we should cheer. So I think it's good to approach with a little bit of caution, but I think it's bad to preemptively, effectively do the equivalent of like preemptively try to destroy their reputation and short sell them. Not that you can literally do that, but you get my point.
Yeah, but we're just left in this place where it's like Silent Hill 2 remake could be pretty good, could be not that good, but also could be pretty good. All the other Townfall, Ascension, and the movie, it was like could be fine, should be fit. The Townfall probably good because no code, and then you go Silent Hill F. Well, Dev's a wee bit ropey on that, not having much experience, but with an exceptional writer at the helm, it's going to at least be something. And then the aesthetics of the trailer for Silent Hill F they are absolutely perfect. They are genuinely spot on. Like, I'm not a big man for horror. Maybe a little bit more into it after reading Parasite Eve there a while ago and kind of enjoying some of the technical aspects of J-horror. Maybe not all of it, a bit over the top at the end. But the idea of just, maybe I'll find myself a little bit more into it. But watching the Silent Hill F trailer, I was like, I'm sold 100%.
Yeah.
Here's 1960s Japanese mushrooms by a great writer. Absolutely.
Look, we could all be angry or we could just hope for the best, and I absolutely hope for the best. I think a world like I've really enjoyed the Resident Evil remakes. So, you know what? A world where all this actually turns out good. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Konami, we may have historical beef with them, but ultimately what we're here for is good video games made by passionate developers who enjoy video games. And if this partnership ultimately leads to that, then that is indeed a very good thing.
Especially when you think of Konami kind of crawling back to games after Pachinko maybe starting to not be the perfect future thing for all time. I just kind of go, oh, you're back, are you? Well, you'll have to pay a pretty hefty entry fee of making good Silent Hill games. But, I mean, why not give them that second chance in a way?
That's the price. Hopefully they are going to pay it. That's it for today's video. So you can check out we published on the channel before today, and there will be another video tomorrow because we're very busy. Tomorrow's one will be pretty damn interesting, so get subbed. All right, see you then.